Had a conversation early that morning, and then we had a conversation later that day. I think we had the right people involved in the conversation. At the end of the day, that's Andrew Berry's call. Andrew made the call to pick Shedeur. Just like who's going to start or what play we're going to call is Kevin's call, but that's Andrew's call. He made the.
We talk oftentimes about quarterback being the most important position in the sport. We obviously spend a lot of time with Shedeur throughout the process. He's highly accurate, can play well from the pocket, very productive college career.
The Cleveland Browns finally made it official. Shedeur Sanders is starting his first NFL game this weekend against the Raiders, and the truth behind how we got here is going to stun everyone who thought they understood how this team actually operates. What just came out doesn't feel like normal inside the league drama. It feels like a whole different level of chaos. An NFL insider dropped a report so explosive that players, agents, and coaches around the league are still trying to figure out how something like this even happened. It exposes a major problem inside Kevin Stefanski's quarterback development process.
Really, really good stuff. Proud of you.
All right. Cool.
Really, really nice stuff.
You're not fully proud, kinda.
I'm
kind of proud.
Look, for your first side, was a perfect no, but you made
the kind of problem that makes you look at the Browns and wonder if this was neglect, sabotage, or something even worse. Because this wasn't just a rookie struggling like any normal young quarterback. This was a setup built on zero preparation, zero structure, and an offensive lineman openly admitting he didn't even know Shedeur Sanders' snap count during the game. That's not miscommunication. That's a meltdown that feels way too intentional to ignore. Before we go deeper, you need the full picture, because once the context is clear, everything about the Browns' handling of Shedeur starts to look unbelievable. He entered the NFL as a third-round pick with a massive spotlight already attached to his name. The son of Deion Sanders, one of the greatest athletes to ever live. A kid who grew up on camera, played under his father at Colorado, and became one of the most talked-about college QBs in years. People either supported him fully or couldn't stand him, and there wasn't much in between. The Browns knew exactly what kind of attention came with drafting him. They knew fans would watch every move. They knew critics would monitor every rep. And somehow, after choosing him, they followed it up by creating the worst possible environment for a young quarterback trying to develop in the NFL. Training camp arrives, and Dillon Gabriel, the other rookie QB, is getting all the first-team reps. That part is normal at first glance. He was labeled the starter, so naturally he works with the ones. But here's where things jump straight into the bizarre. In the NFL, backup quarterbacks always get certain reps with the starting offense. They get timing work with the top receivers. They learn the cadence with the starting O-line. They run special packages. Even third-string QBs get sprinkled reps, because everyone knows injuries happen and the next guy has to be ready on a second's notice. But in Cleveland,
I love when you tell the facts. Did you know? But it's okay. It's okay.
Listen, you did a nice job. Okay? So just take what you learned from tonight, apply it to the joint practices and in the next preseason. All right?
You were the real player now. I'm going to bring that sauce to you.
I know you will. Really good job. That's a great start.
None of that happened. Shedeur Sanders wasn't running timing routes with the starting receivers. He wasn't learning protections with the top offensive linemen. And he wasn't even given time to match cadence with the unit that would eventually block for him. That's not just unusual, that's unheard of. And we're not talking rumors or whispers. Offensive linemen, grown professionals, went on record after the Baltimore game and admitted they didn't know Shedeur Sanders' cadence. They didn't know his rhythm. They didn't know the timing of when the ball was going to be snapped. They were completely disconnected from the quarterback they were supposed to protect. And this isn't because they're bad at their jobs or because Shedeur had some impossible cadence. It's because the Browns never had them practice it. Not once. Not in camp. Not during preseason. Not during weekly prep. When an NFL O-line doesn't know the QB's snap count, that's not an accident. That's a structural failure. Anyone who understands NFL football knows how unreal this is. Peter Schrager, one of the most respected insiders in the entire league, talked about it publicly, and you could see the shock on every analyst's face. Because this is the type of detail that teams drill nonstop. From OTAs to preseason to the scout team. It's basic football 101. Even if a guy is listed as QB3, he still works the cadence. He still builds chemistry. He still gets moments with the starters because coaches need everyone ready for the worst-case scenario. And Shedeur Sanders wasn't QB3. He was the actual number 2 on the depth chart, clearly positioned as the next man up if Gabriel got hurt or struggled. That makes what happened even wilder.
No, I mean, with a young quarterback with Dillon starting, you want to make sure he gets a lot of the reps. Different when you have a veteran like Joe, I would tell you.
The Browns somehow treated their backup quarterback like a complete outsider, and when the moment came for him to step onto the field in a real NFL game, He was surrounded by teammates who had never actually operated with him before. That's not a mistake. That's a system breakdown. And now, as Shedeur Sanders finally gets his first official start, the entire league is asking the same question. What in the world was going on behind the scenes in Cleveland? Now we need to talk about Kevin Stefanski, because this is where the entire situation takes a sharp turn into something way more complicated than fans realized. Stefanski isn't some random coach. He's a two-time NFL Coach of the Year, earning the award in 2020 and again in 2023, which shows he can build schemes, control the game plan, and get consistent results when everything around him is stable. But here's the stat that forces everyone to pause for a second and seriously wonder what's going on inside this system. Shedeur Sanders is about to become the 13th starting quarterback Stefanski has used since he took over the Browns in 2020. 13 different starters in 5 seasons. And once you hear that number, you can't pretend it's all just bad luck anymore. When you see turnover like that, it stops looking like coincidence and starts looking like a trend that points directly back to the person running the offense. Think about it. Who were those 13 quarterbacks? Seeing the full list puts the whole situation into a different light, and honestly, it's wild.
They are seeing some things in practice because I've seen them with my own 2 eyes. Shedeur Sanders, I've told you guys so many times, throws a beautiful ball. He is very, very accurate. He has elite accuracy.
Baker Mayfield, Case Keenum, Nick Mullins, Deshaun Watson, Jacoby Brissett, Joe Flacco, P.J. Walker, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, Jeff Driscoll, Jameis Winston, Bailey Zapp, Dylan Gabriel, and now Shedeur Sanders. 13 different guys, all trying to survive inside the same structure. The same coaching style, the same system. Some of them were veterans with miles of NFL experience. Some were raw young players trying to grow into starters. Some were supposed to be long-term franchise solutions. And somehow none of them lasted under Stefanski's system loud enough or long enough for the Browns to actually stabilize at the position. Sure, you can say a few of these quarterbacks weren't good enough, and that happens in the NFL. But here's where things get interesting. Several of these quarterbacks have looked better in other environments than they ever looked in Cleveland. That is not something you can just ignore. Take Baker Mayfield, for example. The Browns moved on from him, and now he's thriving in Tampa Bay playing confident, controlled football under Todd Bowles and Dave Canales. He looks steady, composed, and like the exact player Cleveland hoped he would become when they drafted him. Joe Flacco is another crazy case. He showed up in Cleveland after being away from real action, stepped onto the field, and suddenly looked like the version of himself that used to carve up defenses years ago. Then the moment he left the Browns system, everything shifted again and the rhythm disappeared. Even Jacoby Brissett has managed to be a reliable, capable quarterback everywhere he's been in the league. So you have to ask the uncomfortable question. Is this really about the quarterbacks, or is it about the structure they were placed inside?
Getting started. Shedeur is going to start at quarterback. Dylan is still in the concussion protocol. He is improving. But obviously we got to put a plan together for all of our players, all of our offense, our defense, our special.
Now we get to the moment everything flipped. Shedeur Sanders finally got his chance against the Ravens, and that's when the real story behind this situation became impossible to hide. Dylan Gabriel goes down with a concussion. Stefanski is forced to turn to his backup, and suddenly the entire operation falls apart because the backup wasn't actually prepared to run the offense he was thrown into. The offensive line didn't know his cadence. The receivers didn't have timing with him. The entire game plan was built around Gabriel's style. Fast release, quick timing, short area passing. And Shedeur Sanders plays a completely different brand of football. He holds the ball longer. He scans the field, and he pushes the ball vertically, which requires more time and more chemistry. Everything about the moment was set up for chaos, and that's exactly what played out on live television. Shedeur finished 4 for 16, 4 completions on 16 attempts. Numbers that look awful when you don't understand what was happening around him. And instantly the narrative turned into he's not ready, he can't play. The Browns made a mistake, even though the situation was stacked against him from the second he stepped onto the field. But if you actually watch the film, not the box score, not the highlight cuts, the truth is way more layered than people want to admit. On almost half of those incompletions, Shedeur had pressure in his face before he even finished his drop back. How is any quarterback supposed to operate when the O-line is blocking for a completely different tempo? The offensive line was protecting like Gabriel was still back there. Short drops, quick release, timing windows, while Shedeur was trying to run deeper concepts. That means the line was out of rhythm from the snap because they weren't synced to the quarterback running the play. Routes weren't being run at the right depth either, because the receivers were still moving at Gabriel's rhythm instead of adjusting to Shedeur's natural pace. You could see it clearly. Receivers coming out of breaks too early, too shallow, or too late, all because they weren't used to how Shedeur operates. Nothing about that offense was in sync. Not because Shedeur Sanders failed, but because the structure around him wasn't designed for him to succeed. The real reason everything fell apart is simple. Shedeur Sanders never got the preparation he needed to get the entire offense operating on the same wavelength. And the worst part is the coaching staff knew the risks all along. They understood Dillon Gabriel was one hit away from being knocked out of a game because that's just the reality of NFL football. Every quarterback is one play away, especially when the offensive line is already struggling to keep the pocket clean and protect the starter under constant pressure. And even with that knowledge, even with the clear possibility that Shedeur might need to step in at any moment, they still didn't take the time to get him fully prepared with the unit he'd eventually lead. That's not a simple mistake. That's a direct choice not to invest in your backup quarterback's readiness, especially on a team that claims to be fighting for a playoff spot right now. For a veteran-heavy roster built to win immediately, that kind of approach isn't just careless, it's completely unacceptable. And this is where the insider reports start revealing something deeper. Something that hints the real issue isn't about football execution, but about politics inside the building in Cleveland. Multiple sources have hinted that there's a genuine divide between the front office and the coaching staff when it comes to the quarterback plan. The owner and general manager may have one vision, one timeline, one preferred player they want to see succeed, while Kevin Stefanski and his offensive staff might have a totally different direction they believe is best. That type of disconnect is dangerous for any team. But when it involves a young quarterback, the damage multiplies fast because the player becomes stuck between two competing agendas rather than being developed under one clear vision. Instead of being guided with intention, he becomes a piece on a chessboard in a political battle he never asked to be part of. Now imagine what that feels like for Shedeur Sanders specifically. He enters the league as a controversial pick because of the attention surrounding his famous father, Deion Sanders. Half the fans are excited about his upside, while the other half questions whether he truly earned the opportunity or whether the spotlight boosted his draft position. Every camera is locked on him, waiting to see whether he'll rise to the challenge or collapse under the pressure. And all the while, he's trying to build his NFL identity inside an organization that might not even be aligned on what his role should be from day to day. That's a brutal environment for any young player to walk into, let alone a rookie quarterback trying to adjust to the toughest league in the world. And then comes the moment after his rough outing against Baltimore. Suddenly, the messaging shifts completely. Now the Browns are talking about building continuity for him, designing the offense around his strengths, making sure the offensive line understands his cadence and timing, and finally giving him the structure he needed months ago. With Dillon Gabriel in concussion protocol, Shedeur is officially the starter for the upcoming matchup against the Raiders, and magically, the entire coaching staff is doing all the things that should have been happening during training camp. They're giving him first-team reps all week. They're tailoring plays to fit what he does best. They're meeting with the offensive line to sync up protection, timing, and communication. So the obvious question is this: where was this approach 3 months ago? Why did it take a crisis to trigger the basic preparation every NFL quarterback should receive the moment camp begins? The truth is uncomfortable, but it's becoming increasingly clear. They didn't believe they would need him. They assumed Dillon Gabriel would stay healthy, or they didn't prioritize preparing Shedeur because internal disagreements made his development less urgent to certain people in the building. Maybe it was politics. Maybe it was a lack of alignment. Maybe it was doubt in Shedeur as a long-term option. Either way, the result was the same. A backup quarterback wasn't prepared because the organization believed they could gamble with his development and never have to face the consequences. But in the NFL, you don't get to operate on assumptions because this league punishes every gap in preparation. Championship teams prepare every player, especially quarterbacks, for every scenario because they know the game can flip in an instant. Now, we have to talk about the part of the story that everyone keeps dancing around, because this is the conversation that always resurfaces whenever Shedeur Sanders' name comes up. His father is Deion Sanders, one of the most electric, controversial, and decorated athletes in American sports history, a two-time Super Bowl champion and Hall of Famer who now dominates the college scene with his voice, his style, and his influence. Deion's personality is a spotlight all by itself, loud, confident, magnetic, and he's everywhere in sports media, constantly keeping eyes on whatever he touches. And yes, inside the league and inside certain front offices, there are people who view Shedeur as Deion's son first, instead of evaluating him as his own quarterback. That perception follows him into every room he walks into, whether he wants it or not. There are some evaluators who quietly question whether Shedeur earned his path or whether being a Sanders made doors open faster than they should have, and that bias absolutely impacts how he's judged, even if people don't want to admit it. Would another third-round rookie have been iced out of first-team reps the way Shedeur was during camp? Would another backup have been placed in a situation so unprepared that the offensive line didn't even know his cadence? It's hard to believe that happens without some personal feelings mixed into the process. This is why the questions get uncomfortable, because the pattern doesn't look like an accident. At some point, these choices start to look intentional, and those decisions put Shedeur Sanders in a position where failure was more likely than success from the first moment he stepped on the field. And here's something analysts keep missing. Shedeur Sanders and Dillon Gabriel are completely different types of quarterbacks, and that matters in a massive way when you're trying to understand the Baltimore game. Gabriel's entire style is built on lightning-fast releases under 2 seconds from snap to throw, hitting timing routes, and playing in rhythm to keep the offense moving with quick punches and short area precision. There's nothing wrong with that. It's effective, it's efficient, and it works. Gabriel has shown he can run that system smoothly, and the Browns built their plan around that exact approach. But Shedeur Sanders plays a different game entirely. He's patient, he scans the field, he's willing to hold the ball longer, let routes develop, and hunt for the deeper plays that change drives. That doesn't make him better or worse. It simply means he needs a different structure, different timing, and different route concepts to make the system function around him. So when the Browns designed an entire game plan around Gabriel's fast-paced rhythm, then suddenly threw Shedeur into that exact system with no adjustments and no preparation with the starters, the result was guaranteed chaos. The protection didn't match how long he holds the ball. The routes didn't match the timing he expects. Everything was running on the wrong clock because the offense was built for a completely different quarterback. We saw the consequences on every drive. The timing was off, the spacing was off, and the rhythm was completely broken. Not because Shedeur couldn't play, but because he was trying to operate inside a system built for someone else. That's not on the quarterback. That falls on coaching. And when you compare that situation to how legends like Bill Parcells handled their teams, the contrast becomes almost shocking. Parcells, one of the greatest coaches in NFL history, constantly pushed for extended practices specifically so backup players could get more reps, more scenarios, and more real preparation. He believed depth wins games, depth wins seasons, and depth separates contenders from pretenders. He made sure every backup was ready for their moment because he knew every season brings unexpected twists, and you don't get a warning when your starter gets hurt. That kind of preparation is what elite organizations do. The work nobody talks about, the extra reps nobody sees, the foundation that keeps teams steady when the storm hits. Kevin Stefanski has always been praised as an offensive mastermind, and in terms of scheme and design, he is. His concepts are sharp, his play calls are creative, and he's shown he can build an efficient offense even without superstar talent across the board. But somewhere in that brilliance, the development process has collapsed, and that's where everything has fallen apart. Because a great scheme means nothing if players aren't prepared to run it. A clever playbook doesn't matter if the quarterback hasn't built timing with the receivers, and no amount of X's and O's can hide a team that hasn't invested in getting its backups ready for real snaps. That's the exact disconnect we're seeing in Cleveland. The ideas are strong, but the preparation has cracked, and that crack became impossible to ignore the moment Shedeur Sanders stepped into the game. Now, as the Browns prepare for the Raiders, Shedeur Sanders finally gets what he should have had months ago, a full week of real reps with the starters. The offensive line is working on his cadence. The playbook is being shaped around his strengths instead of forcing him into someone else's formula. The receivers are building timing with him. Everything that should have been routine from the start is suddenly happening now because they no longer have a choice. Maybe Shedeur Sanders really does need more time to adjust to the speed, windows, and chaos of an NFL game. But here's what I honestly believe is going to happen. And I'm saying this loud before kickoff so it's on the record. Shedeur is going to step onto that field and look completely different than he did in Baltimore. Not because he suddenly transformed in 7 days, but because this time he was finally given real preparation and actual support. When a talented player is put in a system that fits him, when he gets reps that matter, when his coaches actually invest in his development, he shows what he's capable of. And Shedeur is about to prove that. The moment he gets structure, timing, and a game plan built around his strengths, he's going to look like a quarterback who belongs in this league. And when that happens, everyone will have to face the uncomfortable truth. What happened in Baltimore wasn't about Shedeur Sanders being unprepared mentally. It was about the team failing to prepare him physically and logistically. The blame falls on the organization, not the rookie. The Raiders' defense isn't some unstoppable unit. They've got gaps you can attack, matchups that favor a young quarterback, and openings in coverage that a confident passer can hit all day. This is exactly the type of game where a rookie should be able to run the offense, make plays in rhythm, settle in, and start building real NFL momentum. If Shedeur can't move the offense even after a full week of first-team work, then yes, the questions about whether he's the long-term answer are fair. But if he comes out sharp, if he shows command, if he looks like a QB who just needed proper preparation, then the narrative flips fast, and a whole lot of people are going to owe him an apology. More importantly, Cleveland will need to start asking tough questions about Kevin Stefanski's development process and why things were so disconnected before this week. Because the real story isn't just about Baltimore, it's about why Shedeur was thrown into a situation where failure was almost guaranteed. Now think about what's truly at stake beyond this one matchup. Shedeur Sanders has roughly 8 games left this season to prove he's the franchise quarterback Cleveland can build around. 8 games to show the owner, the GM, the coaching staff, and the fans that he should be the guy moving forward. 8 games to quiet everyone who doubts him because of his last name. 8 weeks to show that Baltimore wasn't a reflection of his talent, but a reflection of the circumstances he walked into. That's extreme pressure for any rookie quarterback, especially one who already had to climb out of the hole the organization put him in. And the timing makes everything even more intense. Cleveland holds 2 first-round picks in the upcoming draft. They could trade up for a top quarterback prospect, stay put and draft a new rookie, or fully commit to Shedeur Sanders if he earns it down the stretch. That decision will shape the entire franchise for years, and it's all going to come from this tiny 8-game window. The NFL isn't patient. You don't get endless years to grow. You don't get unlimited chances, and you definitely don't get to reset the clock whenever things aren't perfect. You get a short window, and you either seize it or watch the next guy take the opportunity you lost. Here's the part that really sticks with me. This goes beyond Shedeur Sanders, and it raises a question that's been haunting the league for decades. How many talented young quarterbacks have been written off not because they lacked ability, but because they landed in messy situations that never developed them the right way? How many players were labeled busts when really the organization was the problem, not the quarterback? We've seen it over and over again in NFL history. Careers derailed because the support system wasn't there. Look at Josh Rosen, thrown into a disaster in Arizona, labeled a bust after one season, bounced around the league, and eventually faded away. But was he truly that bad, or did Arizona fail him before they immediately pivoted to Kyler Murray? Sam Darnold struggled for years with the Jets, got buried under nonstop dysfunction, and everyone said he was finished. Then he showed flashes of real ability the moment he finally got structure and support elsewhere. And he's not the only one. The league is filled with guys who didn't get a fair chance because the environment broke before they did. This is why Shedeur's situation matters. It's bigger than one game, bigger than one rookie, bigger than one season. It's a test of whether Cleveland can finally develop a quarterback correctly, or whether they'll fall back into the patterns that have dragged this franchise down for decades. And if you enjoyed the breakdown, make sure you like, comment, share, and subscribe, because the story of Shedeur Sanders and the Cleveland Browns is only getting more intense from here.